Hey guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another House Rules video. In this one we're going to be looking at equipment. Well, we did in the last video as well, but in that video we were looking at how we acquired equipment. Because not only can you get equipment the standard Dungeons & Dragons way of looting it off your fallen foes, but you can go out and you can buy it. But in certain types of game that doesn't suit. Because in the game that we're creating together, you're going to be playing a Hell Cop. So a member of a government agency where you will be allocated equipment. But of course you can go out and buy it out of your pay as well. So you'll have a mixture of equipment that you're allocated by your job and that you'll be buying. So we came up with a system that worked that way after looking at various games like Stargate where you had equipment allocation, etc. But in this video we're going to be having a look at how equipment actually works. Now, it's taken me a while to do this video because I was actually quite intimidated by it. Because there's so many ways that games handle equipment, and it tends to be in a very piecemeal manner. They don't tend to handle things in the same way for everything. You have different rules for weapons, different rules for armor, and then each item of equipment will have separate rules. Look through your Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook and you will see under the descriptions they have pieces of rules, as do many other role-playing games. And I kind of didn't want that. But anyway, let's have a look at a bunch of different role-playing games and see how they handle it. And I'll be back at the end of the video with the computer desktop and the rules that we've been writing up, which hopefully I've remembered to link in the description down below so you can have a look. And we shall see how we'll take it forward and whether we can create a more unified system than most. So first up as usual we have Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Now I've got the Player's Handbook here, and on page 143 we have equipment. Now equipment's kind of handled in a hodgepodge way, because we've got things like armour, where you get an armour class, and certain types you're allowed to add your dexterity modifier to create a better type of armour if you are dexterous. And then you've got weapons, which have a certain amount of damage, which you will add your strength, or a dexterity bonus, depending on the type of weapon. And then you've got other things. So we've got things like a fishing tackle here. This kit includes wooden rod, silken line, corkwood bobbers, steel hooks, lead sinkers, velvet lures, and narrow netting. And that's it. There is no bonus for having it. You fishing without it, the Games Master is supposed to penalise you for. But there's no rule which tells you that. You use the fishing tackle to just be able to use your skill. And there's certain other things, ball bearings have a DC dexterity test for people to avoid falling if you scatter an area. And various equipment like that, where they have a specialised rule just for that item of equipment. So it's very much a hodgepodge. You've got your weapons which are handled away, you've got your armour which is handled in kind of two ways, based on decision as to whether it's heavy or not. And then you've got other equipment which is either just descriptive or it has a special rule assigned to it. And next up we've got rifts. And again, this handles it in a very hodgepodge way. If we go on to page 205, we've got sort of levels of technology. And it briefly goes over things. High technology, what it counts as that. We've got pre-rifts artifacts. But these are all very descriptive. Finding working radio equipment. But they don't have anything like a range or a functionality. It's just a radio. Now further on, we see how this hodgepodge really moves into details. Because we've got various fancy sets of powered armor. Let's find the Glitter Boy, because that's probably the most iconic one. So we've got the Glitter Boy armor. And it's got a lot of details. So we've got its mega damage per location, how many hit points it has, how much damage it takes before you get hurt. We've got its speed, because it's a giant robot suit, so it's also a vehicle. We've got its weapon system, so we've got its boom gun, which is detailed out. There's some nice pictures here, of course. As I said, the Glitter Boy is perhaps the most iconic thing in Rifts. Its purposes, anti-aircraft, assault and anti-armor, its damage, the effects of the sonic boom when it's fired, lots of very specific rules for its weapon. We've got bonuses that the armor gives you for hand-to-hand combat, because it's a giant robot, so you're smashing things. And then we've got various things like sensor systems, thermo imager, which allows the pilot to see in the dark, in shadows, and through smoke, range 2,000 feet. Infrared and ultraviolet optics, advanced laser targeting. So, as well as having its key features, mega damage armor and its big gun, it's got these other functions as well, which helps you out. And every set of armor basically has these. Now that's a very Rifts thing, that everything is so customized and interesting that it has its own separate rules. But it does mean that the rules can be very hodgepodge, and you can find ways of exploiting a single item, leading to one of my complaints about Rifts is that it's unbalanced and it could do with a serious rewriting and fixing of all this. And next up, we've got Gerps. Now on page 71, we've got the rules for it, because the equipment section itself is separate. And we go through things like armor, which has damage ratings, protection ratings, passive defense. So armor protects you under its own set of rules. And then you've got damage ratings, how many dice you're rolling, plus and minus bonuses to do damage. But the actual equipment, if we go through to Fantasy Medieval, page 212, 213 for modern equipment, is very briefly covered. So again, we've got a shovel, £6, costs $12. Swiss Army knife, this is the only tool a mechanic has, he rolls at -3 instead of -5. Weight negligible, $25. So the equipment has special rules and penalties if you're not using the right equipment. So a proper toolkit will allow you to do something without a penalty. And once again, a skill you are just using doesn't have the full rules. You're not just rolling your dice, you're applying some other things here. But most of the equipment, as you see, is just a description. So, a watch. Weight negligible, $25 and up. There's no details of what it allows you to do. And next I would like to show off the Star Wars role-playing game, the 2nd edition revised and expanded version. One of my favourite role-playing games of all time. Now on page 225 we've got the weapons and equipment section. And basically the system is a little overly complex because every item has its own specific rules. So we've got the jetpack here. Game notes. It allows movement vertically 200 meters per charge, horizontally up to 500 meters. Trying to locate it by auditory pickups is a +10 penalty to the difficulty. We've got macro binoculars, which if attached to a blaster, they provide a +3 bonus to all medium and long range shots, using sort of sniping attacks. We've got rocket packs, we've got sensor packs, which have a +1d bonus to sensors to scan. And all of these items tend to have a bonus they give you. Not specifically just to a skill, but they give you an extra advantage. Weapons are different, of course, so we've got, like a holdout blaster here, does a standard 3 dice damage. And we've got melee weapons, which add to your strength, so the stronger they are, the more damage you're going to be doing. So the Vibro Axe does strength plus 3 dice plus 1 pip, up to a maximum of 7 dice damage. But one of the design philosophies in Star Wars that I really like is shown off by the Stormtrooper armor here. Basically, you get +2 dice to resist physical damage, +1 dice to resist energy damage. Now, in their design philosophy, you're allowed to give a +1 bonus for anything. An item you buy will give you a bonus. You can get a custom computer, which gives you a +1 bonus, 1 dice bonus to your skill when using it. But if you want more than that, it needs to have penalties. So, -1d penalty to all dexterity attribute and skill checks. And it gives you things here, +2 dice to perception checks, 2 dice to range skill against targets move more than 10 meters. It's got other things built in. But the base advantage against physical damage had to be compensated for. So you got a penalty on your dexterity skills. And that's kind of how it works. That every item you've got, which gives you more than 1 dice bonus, has to have a disadvantage to it. And will cause a penalty. Whether it's limited by its energy, by its chance to break, however. But there must be something to balance out that extra damage. That was part of the design philosophy. They didn't stick to it all the time, but I think it's a nice solid idea. And next up, a much more modern game, although based on an older game again, Cyberpunk Red. Obviously very, very similar to Cyberpunk 2020, as it's just the updated version, really. Now, it's a very large book, so we're on to equipment at page 341. Now, weapons are a certain amount of dice you roll for the damage. So larger weapons do more dice damage. But other equipment, if we go on to that, has nothing but a description. Anti-smog breathing mask used for filtering out toxins. User is immune to the effect of toxic gases, fumes, and all similar dangers that must be inhaled to affect the user. Audio recorder records up to 24 hours of audio. These are descriptive things. So the games master says you're being gassed and you go, oh, well, I've got my breathing mask. There's no rules here. It's just descriptive. And if we look at toolkits, because that's what we've seen a couple of times, we've got the tech bag, and it describes what's in it, but there's no bonus or penalty. Simply put, the games master uses it descriptively once again. So you're trying to fix something, you've got your fix skill. If the games master decides you don't need tools, then you just get to use your skill. But you don't get to use it at all if the games master says, well, you need some tools. Or perhaps he can introduce a penalty or whatever. But it's all descriptive. There's no rules in for the individual items. And last up, a World of Darkness game, Werewolf The Apocalypse. Now this is 2nd edition. Now, Werewolf The Apocalypse, like most of the other World of Darkness games, uses the storyteller system. And that is based about telling stories. So equipment is handled in a very light way. You don't tend to have big equipment lists where you're carrying 50 feet of rope and some grapples and whatever. If there are any possessions or piece of equipment you want your character to have, you should work out the details now. Otherwise, you'll have to acquire the equipment during game. This can take time and is not automatically successful. Almost any piece of mundane equipment that fits your concept can be obtained, provided your character has sufficient dots in the resources background. Certain items like fetishes can only be gained by possessing a particular trait, in this case a background. So basically equipment is just a list of stuff you have. Oh yeah, I've got some rope because I put it on my character sheet during creation, or I went out and got it during an adventure. It doesn't offer any advantages other than storytelling. Yeah, I've got a piece of rope so I can climb up that cliff face. And that's very much how it handles things. The special equipment, you've got your weapons, obviously, so guns and things have a set amount of damage. Melee weapons tend to add to your strength. Once again, basing it on how strong your character is, with a bit of bonus damage from that. But most of the other equipment in the game, unless it's magical and is giving a specific benefit, is just descriptive. Oh, I've got a toolkit so I can go and fix that car. So here we are at the computer desktop, and I've opened up the Google document with the Satanic Panic rules we've been developing all these weeks. And hopefully I'll remember to link that down below in the description if you want to check it out. Now, not much has changed. These are pretty much the same as they've been. There's some bits which I've fleshed out, and that's going to be a major part of one of the later videos. One of the very final ones where we flesh everything out. Because we've got the basic framework here. You know, the section I'm looking at now, skills. We need to put in skill descriptions. We need to flesh this out for players. But that's all in the future. That's all boring grunt work. We're doing the fun stuff where we're coming up with systems. Now, scrolling right down through all the sections on races, on the life path character creation that we came up with, right down to equipment. So we'd come up with the wealth system and the gear picks, because you're going to be working in a police force, so you'll get some equipment allocated to you, and you'll have gear picks, where you can choose what equipment your police officer is going to have in their job as a hell cop, enforcing the law against demons. But they'll also have some money, where they can go out and buy things personally. Now, this is going to be a very small part of the game, but it does mean that if there's a storyline where they end up getting booted out of the force because they've been framed for something, then some of them will have bought a pistol, and they'll still have access to a weapon, for example. But anyway, the equipment I've gone with, and the system that we're going with, or I've decided to go with here, is that everything gives an advantage. So, if you're attempting to repair something, for example, and you don't have any tools, then you're using your base skill. Now, the Games Master can decide that certain things will increase the target number for that, because you need specialized tools for soldering or whatever if you're trying to repair something. But basically, you use your skill. And because you've got tools, you get a bonus to that skill. So we've got things like the respirator here. Now, a respirator filters out toxins and gases, but it gives you a bonus to your endurance to resist those. Because by not putting it on properly, some of the gas could leak in or something like that. So it's still putting it into the story. You're not immune to those things. It's not a totally story-based thing where you've gained that ability to filter out all those things completely. But it gives you a massive bonus to resist them, compared to somebody who's not wearing a respirator. We've got a ballistic vest, a bulletproof vest here, which gives you a bonus to your defense versus damage. So you'll gain extra dice to roll on that. And we put in fairly low wealth DCs for you to get these things, and also gear picks. And then we're on to weapons. Well, weapons, I've decided, are going to continue using this system. Everything's giving a bonus. So a person can go out and punch something. Let me do a wee bit of editing, because that looked a bit odd. Person can go and punch somebody and use their strength. But if they're using a knife, they're going to be doing bonus damage. And things like pistols will add to that as well. Much more so. So a knife adds to your strength. You gain a +2 to your strength damage. But if you're using a pistol, you've got a +3 to your dexterity for making that attack. A submachine gun and a shotgun likewise give bigger bonuses. A submachine gun gives a +4, shotgun gives a +5. And then we've got things like toolkits here, where a toolkit gives you a +2 to applicable skills. A medical kit gives you a +2 to your medicine skill. You can still bandage somebody up even if you don't have a medical kit with drugs, pills, bandages in it. You can still patch somebody up, but you're using your base skill. Having a medical kit helps you out. And its bonus is enough to make it very, very useful. And that's the way I was thinking this system would work, that everything gives you an advantage or cancels out a disadvantage. Because something like a torch, for example, would not give you a bonus to see, but it would cancel out the disadvantage of darkness to a degree. And things like infrared goggles would probably work a little bit better than just a torch. But that's the way I'm thinking these rules work. Obviously, I've only added a very few things in. That's one of the areas which will definitely need fleshed out in the future. But I think there's some interesting ideas in there, and it's keeping a consistent system, which many role-playing games I see don't do. But anyway, let me know what you think of this in the comments down below. It would be very much appreciated. I've been building up on these comments and they have been very, very useful, especially as we go into the last few videos where we're going to be fixing things which have been spotted. But anyway, I think I've been wittering on for quite long enough as usual, so thank you very much for watching. But as always, most of all, you look after yourselves. And I'll catch you later. Bye now.